Hello, I'm Patrick Thomas, and welcome to Ladder Talks. This is a continuation talk. I'm going to call it part two of, it might be part two of three at the rate that we're going here. I just did part one regarding the North Metro Hospital closure. In part one, I read a letter to the editor that was in the Wednesday, August 21st Leader News. I read that entire editorial. That was pre-closure about the rumors. You may want to go listen to part one if you have not. In part one, I also I didn't read the article, but I discussed some of the points of today's Saturday, August 24th Leader News. City seeks to reopen ER. What else would you expect them to do? I mean, that's probably a great headline. We need to get the ER back open. It employs people. It generates revenue for somebody so they can pay their property taxes. And I've discussed in part one some of the business aspects of the hospital. And one thing that I didn't make a point of, that I'm going to make it now before I forget it. When the city owns tangible properties, we as citizens don't reap the rewards of property tax payments to support our fire, police, library, and our school. Okay? So it is a good thing for the city to not own buildings. They should be privately owned buildings. And that's what we've got here and I sure hope there's something that I'm not missing. Because if somebody owns a building, they're going to pay property taxes on it. Now, I'm not going to discuss it now, but one of these days I'm going to tell you a story about what I call legal tax evasion. Legal tax evasion. That's another story for another day, but if I forget to tell you that story someday, call me up or something and prompt me to do a story on that. But where I left off was I was just getting into, and this is part two, sleazy operator ruined hospital. Ruined hospital. I was just getting into that whenever I had a video problem, and it's probably a good thing because last time I went over a lengthy time, I had problems. So previously I kept these videos to around 30 minutes or less. So that last one was about 20 minutes. This one here may go 20. And then depending on what I cover, I know if you'll just get to the point, you won't have to take 20. You might be able to do it in 5. So I'm going to jump back into sleazy operator ruined hospital. If we had a more rational healthcare system, there would be no place in it for the likes of Rock Bordelon, says Mr. Feldman. In this same article, he describes how the owners and the management of this North Metro pretty much ran it into the ground. Now, in part one, I discussed the business aspects of it and how you really need to go back and listen to part one if you haven't. In this article, now we know that the hospital has been closed. And so now this is obviously a response since the editorial talking about the rumors and how people could possibly get hurt. Again, I'm hesitant I'm not going to read this article to you because I never wanted to do that. I want you to go buy a paper. In this article here, in typical Bordelon fashion, he texted our reporter Rick Crone last week that nothing has changed. I think in the editorial, the text may have said something like business as usual. And in this article here, I think Garrick Feldman, or may have been in the leader or in the editorial, Mr. Feldman said he lied That's just the way it is in business world sometimes, folks. Sometimes you get a notification in 30 days or 90 days we're going to close. They have to go into a shutdown phase to shut down a factory or a business. In this case here, I'm not sure why they didn't give them a notice. But one of the things that I've said earlier that I wanted to get to was I have done an FOI, Freedom of Information request. We call them FOIA requests. Freedom of Information Act request. I've got a copy of 2 call-ins to our JPD dispatch. I don't know if they called Mr. Dale Anderson. I don't know if he called 911. He's the guy that made the official communication to our central dispatch, which would be the appropriate place to make the announcement, I guess, unless you hand delivered a message to the mayor. But when they called in dispatch, that immediately let them know, without having to wait on the information to trickle down to dispatch, let them know, don't send any ambulance to the North Metro emergency room. But I said there was 2 audio recordings that I have a copy of. I'm not going to play them for you. I had thought about playing them, but I'm not going to play them. But I'm just going to tell you about these 2 recordings. The second one was rather interesting. The first one was, "Hi, this is Mr. Anderson. I'm the CEO. I'm here to announce that we are closing the emergency room. You know, this is your notice not to send any ambulances over here." And there was, between the 2 videos, there was some conversations about, are you closing just the ER, or are you closing just the emergency room, or the entire hospital? And the message that was delivered between the 2 videos, audio recordings, was, we're closing the emergency room and the medical facility, the hospital. In one of the videos, Mr. Anderson indicates we're keeping something else open. He called it out and it's muffled just a little bit, but I think he was referring to the psych unit. And we've already talked about the psych unit in the first part. The psych unit was staying open. The psych unit doesn't have to have an emergency room to operate. And so his notification to our dispatch was on audio number 1. I'm not sure how much time lapsed in between audio number 1, but if everything goes by the timeline of midnight, I believe it was midnight that day, they announced to their employees that we're now ceasing operations, go home. So he probably called somewhere around midnight, let's just say. It wasn't long after that our dispatch received a second phone call from Mr. Anderson, and it went something like, "I need some assistance over here because things aren't going well. We have an issue." Yeah, he probably had some pretty upset folks on his hands, and they were probably ready to string him up. They were probably calling you sleazy operator. Who knows? So that wasn't discussed in the later news article, but that was information that I got because I made it my business to know what was going on, and I got those 2 audio recordings, and I'm not going to send them to you, so don't call me up and send them to me. If you want your own copy of the audio recording, do like I did. Send a FOIA request and get it. So here we are. We've got a hospital that is officially closed. We went from the rumor mill, people could get hurt, to our dispatch being notified, and now we no longer send people over there. And now what do we do? So a lot of these employees are being hired by the R-Care folks, apparently next door. It's a separate clinic. Some of them are being hired by them. But back to the sleazy operator ruined hospital story. The sleazy chief executive of a chain of failed hospitals in Arkansas and neighboring states knew he would shut down North Metro's emergency room and pretty much the entire hospital at midnight Tuesday, which would have been Tuesday, August 20th. Without much advanced warning, he fired his emergency room staff and most of the hospital employees, endangering lives of patients. Pretty much sending people home, and now they can't pay their bills, and some people are questioning whether or not they'll even get their paychecks, because this is a financial shutdown, if you will. They've reached the point. Now, some places shut down one day and they reopen the next. These folks are trying to reopen under a micro hospital model. They want to have a limited amount of beds, smaller spaces, and I personally believe in smaller spaces. You go to the emergency room, you get stabilized, you get put into a room, and then when they have a room for you somewhere else, you're probably going to be moved to another hospital. Now, in the business world, that other hospital is probably buying that patient. I'm just guessing. Or getting a referral for sending, I can see it now, St. Vincent saying, hey, send them here. Baptist saying, hey, send them here. I don't want to get into the people who died and had issues, but he told the state health department weeks ago he would close the emergency room, which doomed the hospital since no acute care facility can operate without an ER. On Tuesday, the state gave him his license for a 20-bed psychiatric unit, which he runs in a wing in the back of the first floor. And as I discussed earlier, the psychiatric unit gets better payouts from Medicare, Medicaid, and it's more profitable for them. Those folks in there probably have insurance. They're being paid, where the ER has a lot of people that goes into an ER. Insurance or no insurance, hospitals eat every day. They eat. They knock it off their profits. The unpaid medical bills for people who go into ERs. Most doctors will tell you, send me $5 a month for the rest of your life and you'll be okay. So I'm going to move over to page 4. And again, this second part, we're only going to talk about the North Metro Hospital. I'm going to come back and do another video talking about the rest of the Leader News. And I'm going to move over to page 4. A month before its closure, the hospital had a state inspection. Oh, wait a minute. That's about the story I did on page, the first part. Disregard that. Only when a sharp-eyed TV reporter noticed North Metro was blacking out its emergency room signs did word leak out. Mayor Bob Johnson was informed about developments around 9:30 on Tuesday. If Mr. Bordelon had any decency, he would have announced his intentions months ago, giving employees time to find other jobs. I agree with that. Dale Anderson said, we didn't get the community support we needed. Folks, this is not a charity. This is business. This is about the competition. And it's no different than a restaurant or any other business. If you don't provide a good service, people are going to go somewhere else. They have other choices. And they can get to another hospital pretty quick. It's just right down the street. And with all these other urgent care clinics that are popping up, I'm not sure what's driving that, but there's hospitals closing all across America. They're just another business, and they're struggling too. And with the healthcare industry, I tell you what, folks, our federal government really screwed up our healthcare industry. And I'm going to get off subject here just to talk about this so that you understand where I'm coming from. In America, we tried to solve a problem for 5% of the population, and we screwed it up for the other 95%. Now, for the longest time, I used 5% and 95% when I was making this point. Little did I know at the time how close I really, really was. You've heard people on a national level having conversations about our healthcare changes. We've provided insurance for 20 million people. Well, when you do the math of, let's just say, 323 million people in the population of the United States, and I know it's gone up since then, but just kind of do some fuzzy math. When you do the fuzzy math of 20 million people, around 323 million or somewhere in there, 300 and something million people, that's pretty close to 5%. I was pretty close. We screwed up our healthcare system in this country trying to solve a problem for 5% of the Americans, while at the same time, all of these emergency rooms that were doing okay then, I'm getting on the ladder, okay? Before we screwed up our healthcare system in this country, the emergency rooms and the doctors and the hospitals had enough profit that they were writing off these 5%ers and their expenses. They were okay with that, folks. Now, we as taxpayers, we were probably saying things like, well, no, we're paying for that. No, the hospitals were paying for it. That was part of their willingness to serve the public. We had an excellent healthcare system. But now we've got hospitals all across America that are closing. Yes. Call me up, 501-837-9794. I'm not going to debate you on what I just said. Folks, the prior presidential administration screwed it up for America. I'm going to get down on the lower rung now. Get back to subject, Patrick. I tell you, folks, we didn't get the community support we needed. It's business. It's business. The city is hoping to make a deal with a nearby hospital to reopen the emergency room. Well, I don't know what nearby hospital they're talking about. Probably St. Vincent's or Baptist, St. Jude's. It's going to take a big name to fix this problem. It better be a big name. Now, I noticed that Baptist has facilities in Jacksonville. They've got these little clinics. I think if I had to guess and if I had to predict, Baptist will probably buy this hospital, go in and gut it. They're going to get it at a fire sale. They will probably go in and gut it. St. Vincent's would be okay too. They'll reopen. I'm going to predict this hospital will be reopened under a big name. Now, there's a purchase agreement out there somewhere, and I would imagine when I move over to the story of the Democrat Gazette on Thursday, it might end up being in part 3. We're pushing 18 minutes here, so I'm gonna make this a part 3. So I'm going to finish this up here. Bordelon is holding on to because of more generous Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements. Talking about the psych unit. He has been audited by the federal prosecutors and may not be eligible for future reimbursements. North Metro's sudden closure is certain to draw scrutiny from state and federal investigators. Folks, I'm going to predict he can't reopen that. I'm going to predict they're going to shut him down. They're going to pull licenses, and they're going to say till you get your financial situations. Too many people, too many lives are at stake here. The new hospital management might have to update North Metro, which was built in 1962, including asbestos removal, which would cost millions of dollars. So it's going to take Baptist or St. Vincent's to do this. A new mini hospital with an emergency room such as the one under construction in Cabot might be the best alternative. Even if it becomes that, it'll have to be Baptist or St. Vincent, St. Jude's, maybe a VA. I heard somebody say, let's let it be a VA clinic. I'd be okay with that, and still serve the public. You could serve the public along with the VA. Somebody's going to say, no, we don't want that. It's a government-run hospital now. Folks, we got too many veterans in this area. They need to be able to go to a VA clinic right here in Jacksonville, right outside the front gate of Little Rock Air Force Base. Moving on. Actually, that's all I'm going to say about that. So I'm going to wrap this up. We're at 20 minutes, going on 21. We've got a hospital that's closed. Be aware of it. There's politics going on, trying to get it reopened. I'm going to shut this down, and I'm going to start a part 3 where I'm going to move over to Thursday's Democrat Gazette, where they get their perspective on it, and that's where we're going to talk about the purchase price and where's the money. $10.2 million is what. We'll get to that. I'm Patrick Thomas. This is Ladder Talks. Notice my graphics didn't go to sleep this time. Live from Studio 25, right here in Jacksonville, Arkansas. I'll see you in part 3 of this segment. Talk to you then. Bye.